Hello, my name is Stephen Eiderstein, and welcome to The Narrowing Path, Walking the Spiritual Walk. Thank you for joining me as we do the next installment from the third chapter, As A Man Thinketh, from Emmet Fox's book, Sermon on the Mount. This is the copy I'm going to be reading out of, which is quite important, actually. There is We'll go over it a little bit, but there's a discrepancy between versions, and that's why I get the older versions, because I like to see what was originally written. So we'll talk about that a little bit later on, but I am really looking forward to going through this portion of it. There's a lot of really great stuff in it, and it's really taps into a different perspective on a spiritual practice. So that I love about it. And thank you, everybody, for the support, by the way, on the shorts, on the videos, Spotify, wherever you're watching, wherever you're getting connected. I do have Facebook. I just recently opened a Twitter as well. Not too much on it, just more shorts and things like that, just for to make it more accessible to people, whatever your platform is. So go ahead, follow us wherever you'd like, share, subscribe, all the good stuff. I do appreciate it. So let's go ahead, and we're going to get right to the reading. So like I said, I'm going to be reading out of this. This copy is also available, as well as a couple other newer reprints. This copy that I'm going to be reading out of is from 1938. This book was originally copyrighted in 1934. So it's as close to as a first edition that I could afford. So let's go ahead and we'll get right to it. And again, we're in the third chapter of this book, Sermon on the Mount by Emmet Fox. And we're in the third part of it, which is the third section of scripture that he references. And the verses that that's going to start out this section is Matthew 5:21 through 24. So here we go. Ye have heard that it was said by them of old time, Thou shalt not kill, and whosoever shall kill shall be in danger of the judgment. But I say unto you, that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And whosoever shall say to his brother, Raka, shall be in danger of the council. But whosoever shall say, Thou fool, shall be in danger of hellfire. Therefore, if thou bring thy gift to the altar, and there rememberest that thy brother hath aught against thee, leave thy gift before the altar, and go thy way. First be reconciled to thy brother, then come back and offer thy gift. Matthew 5. The old law, dealing as it did with an earlier and lower state of race consciousness, concerned itself necessarily with external things, for man's apparent evolution is from the outer to the inner, just as his fundamental spiritual growth is from the inner to the outer. He begins by giving his attention exclusively to externals, thinking to find them cause as well as effect. But as he progresses, the truth gradually dawns upon him that outer things are but the finished article, the result of causes and happenings on the inner. And when he has reached this stage, he has started definitely upon the search for God. So the old law concerned itself, at least in the letter, almost altogether with external observances. And it was satisfied with if these were fulfilled. It said, Thou shalt not kill, and provided a man didn't know murder, he kept the law, regardless of how much he may have desired to commit murder or how bitterly he might still hate his enemy. It said, Thou shalt not steal, and provided he did not appropriate his neighbor's property, he was held to have fulfilled the law, irrespective of what he felt about it. Jesus came to carry the human race forward to the next great step, the most important step of all, which can indeed be the final step in the overcoming of all our limitations. If only we can understand clearly that the step implies and take it. The heart of the whole Sermon on the Mount, which is itself the essence of the Christian message, is the insistence upon the need for this very step, the understanding that outer conformity, absolutely essential as it is no longer sufficient in itself, but that now we are to come of age spiritually. We have not merely to conform outwardly to outer rules, but to change the inner man too. The old law said, "Thou shalt not kill," but Jesus said that even to want to kill, nay, even to be angry with your brother is sufficient to keep you out of the kingdom of heaven. As, of course, it is. It was a distinct gain when primitive, barbarous people could be persuaded not to murder those who had offended them, but to develop sufficient self-control to master their anger. Spiritual demonstration demands that anger itself be overcome. It is simply not possible to get any experience of God worth talking about or to exercise very much spiritual power in the way of healing unless and until you have got rid of resentment and condemnation concerning your other man. Until you are prepared to get rid of this sort of thing, your prayers will have very little effect. It may boldly be said that in prayer, the more love, the more power. And this is why people of developed spiritual perception take such constant pains to keep themselves free from thoughts of criticism and condemnation. They know that they can have either their demonstration or their indignation, but that they cannot have both. And so they do not waste time in trying to. Indignation, resentment, the desire to punish other people or to see them punished, the desire to get even, the feeling it serves him right. All these things form a quite impenetrable barrier to the spiritual power or progress. Jesus, dramatizing the thing in the Oriental way, says that if you are bringing a gift to the altar and you remember that your brother has anything against you, you must put down your gift without attempting to offer it and go away and first make peace with your brother. And then, when you have done that, your offering will be acceptable. It was the custom, as we all know, to take gifts of various kinds to the temple, from bulls and cows down to doves and offerings of incense, or where it might be more convenient, an offering of money equivalent in value to these things. Now, under the new law or Christian dispensation, our altar is our own consciousness, and our offerings are our prayers and treatments. Our burnt sacrifices are the error thoughts which we destroy or burn away in spiritual treatment. And so Jesus says that if, when we are about to pray, we remember that we have any wrong things or hard feelings about our brother man, no matter who he may be, and irrespective of whether the object of our hostile thought be an individual or a body of people, we must pause there and treat ourselves until we got rid of this sense of hostility and have once more restored the seamless garment of our spiritual integrity. Jesus builds up this tremendous lesson, again in the Oriental tradition, by employing a series of steps. 3 in this case. He says first that whoever is angry with his brother shall be in danger. Secondly, that to be really or seriously, one may say vindictively, hostile to another is to be in grave danger. And finally, that to hold so low an opinion about a fellow creature as to allow ourselves to consider him to be outside the pale, so to speak, is to shut ourselves off from any hope of spiritual fruit while we remain in this state of mind. To call a man a fool in this sense means that we consider that no good is to be expected from him, which is to deny the indwelling Christ in him. And to do this is to bring very serious consequences upon ourselves. Note carefully that the Authorized or King James Version of the Bible, which is by far the best all-around edition for spiritual purposes, here makes a serious error. which has been corrected in the Revised Version. It makes Jesus say, "Whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause," which is a manifest absurdity. No sane person gets angry without what he deems to be a cause, however trifling or irrelevant, and trifling or irrelevant the cause that he assigns may be. What Jesus said, of course, was that whoever is angry with his brother under any circumstances is in danger. And there we go. That's the end of it. A lot of good stuff. A lot of really, I'm going to say, really relevant things in this reading today. A lot about anger, about hatred, about condemnation, indignation, ill will. These are things we can find so close by in the political climate, social, economic climate, in our friend groups, in our communities. There's a lot of this going on. And to read this was such a realignment to remember that it is never appropriate to do this. It is never appropriate to hold on to something and this sense of judgment, of condemnation, of a wishing of ill will. And so I'm really grateful that this was the reading for today. So let's go ahead and we'll get into it. And I first wanted to just talk about this first thing that he opens up with is he talks about the process of growth. So right in that first paragraph, he says, "For man's apparent evolution is from the outer to the inner, just as his fundamental spiritual growth is from the inner to the outer." So, which I think is interesting. If you just watch people, right, we think we grow from outside of us to the inside of us, right? But when we get to the spiritual principles, we realize at some point, right, it talks about, well, actually, let me read the next quote. "And as he progresses, the truth gradually dawns upon him that outer things are but the finished article, the results of causes and happenings on the inner. And when he reaches this stage, he has started definitely upon the search for God." Now, I absolutely love that. I think it's the absolute truth. It's like we start out with this extremely strong statement about, hey, we initially think our growth is in relation to the outside world, right? Like it's almost like a point of maturity, right? It's like I become more mature so I can interact with the outside world better, right? You come to this point of the outside world shapes you. And then in this point of becoming a mature adult and becoming a spiritual being, you have to take responsibility. And when you take that responsibility for you and everything that you think and everything that you put out into this world and every action that you take, every word that you say, when you accept that responsibility, it's the beginning of a spiritual journey, right? He calls it this. We have started definitely upon the search for God at that point, because this maturity helps us realize that everything outside of us, every situation we come in contact with, every person that we interact with, everybody that's had influence on our lives, we've had a part to play in. We've had a influence over. We've taken in from, and we've made decisions regarding. Right. So this part where he talks about, we realize that everything we do is the end result of internal happenings, is what he calls it. Which I really like, right? Because there's the emotions we feel, it's the thinking, it's the thought, it's the beliefs we hold. Right. There's just so much that actually goes along with this internal happenings, is that what he calls it. And when we get to that point, when we realize it's what's inside of us that we're putting out into this world, and that's responsible for everything that's in this world. You know, we talk about that with the James Allen book, As a Man Thinketh. because he talks about what we believe, what we hold in our heart, what influences what we think, which influences our behaviors and our actions and our words, which influences the world around us. So everything that we put out into the world, everything that we bring out of the world or develops in the world around us, is a better way to say that, is the direct result of what we are thinking and what the beliefs we're holding and where our heart is centered. So we come to this point of maturity, and it comes to this like apex where it's just like, there's got to be more. When we realize we have this influence, right? Because up until that point, we've served ourselves. We've served this selfish master of our own selfish gratifications and things like that. But when we reach this point, it's a whole different ball game. And I love that last statement where he talks about we have started definitely upon the search for God. It's just as, because once you realize this, so many questions come in, like where's the judge of right and wrong? Where's the proper influences? What's the goal and direction you should take, right? Because when you realize the power those influences have on your life and the guiding force they put into your life, you start asking about the integrity of those thoughts, the integrity of this information that you're operating on. Because a lot of us didn't have good information to start with, to be honest with you, or at least I didn't, because I understood incorrectly. I took the wrong beliefs in, and it led me quite astray, actually. So, and he starts again to touch on this understanding, this concept, this principle that it's not enough to just follow the rules anymore, right? And fear the punishment. Fear of the punishment of breaking a rule isn't always a good motivator. Anybody that's in recovery can tell you that fear doesn't keep anyone sober. Fear does not maintain changes in people's behavior. Fear is not a good motivator. The fear will always get overridden at some point. So we have to start changing on the inside, and he calls it, I think he called it the inner man at one point too. Maybe it's on the, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself here, but it is. It's on the next quotes. So he starts talking about this inner thing that needs to be changed, and which led right into which was a beautiful connection piece, because he said, it led right into what he stated Jesus came for, and then also why the Sermon on the Mount was important. He said Jesus came to carry the human race forward to the next great step, the most important step of all, right? So we were at this place where we were trying to govern the outside world and being influenced by the outside world and trying to take on all of this stuff in the outside world, right? And then we realize it's the inner happenings, like we just talked about, that is really guiding the direction of this world, the direction of my life, the quality of my relationships, and everything like that. So he says Jesus came to actually usher in this new understanding. He came in to actually usher in this new belief system, this new principled way of living. And then he says, the heart of the whole Sermon on the Mount, which is itself the essence of the Christian message. So this entire Sermon on the Mount speech in the Gospels of the Bible is the essence of the Christian message, is the insistence upon. So let me start at the beginning of that quote again. The heart of the whole Sermon on the Mount, which is itself the essence of the Christian message, is the insistence upon the need for this step. The understanding that outer conformity, absolutely essential as it is no longer sufficient in itself, but that now, if we are to come of age spiritually, we have not merely to conform outwardly to outer rules, but to change the inner man too. This is big stuff. This is a huge shift in the way of thinking. So Emmet Fox is talking about that Jesus was sent here to take us into the next step of spiritual growth in the spiritual journey, and that the Sermon on the Mount is the root of all his teachings, and that it is not merely good enough now. It is not merely good enough now to just follow the rules, to not steal, to not covet, right? But we have to go and change the inner man too. We have to change what's actually inside of us. It is no longer sufficient only to just abide by the rules. We have to take a look at why we want to break the rules as well. It's important to continue to abide by the rules, right? We have to continue to maintain our moral awareness in this plane. But if we truly want freedom, if we truly want spiritual growth, it's going to take some of this inner work that we constantly talk about on this channel. It's going to take some of this spiritual growth, this shift in principle to not just act right, quote unquote, but to believe and want to do right. It's a whole different kind of way of living here. So this is a shift in consciousness, is why Jesus came to help us get to the next step of our growth, right? This is why in the Christian faith, God sent his son, right? God sent himself down in human form to actually usher us into this new stage of growth and maturity, spiritual maturity. And it is this shift in consciousness to stop just living so simplistically. So the Sermon on the Mount in this piece is integral part of really grabbing on and developing this shift in consciousness, right? It's absolutely crucial. And that part we have to change. We have not merely to conform outwardly to outer rules, but to change the inner man too. We can't just keep bouncing up against laws and rules and have that be a good enough guide, because that doesn't really handle the root of the situation. That doesn't really address the desire to break the rules. So we go on, and he says the old law said thou shalt not kill, but Jesus says that even to want to kill, nay, even to be angry with your brother is sufficient to keep you out of the kingdom of heaven, right? It will rob you of that, even just the anger. So it's not good enough to just not take matters into your own hands. It's not good enough to not want to stop feeling that way. But we can't even hold on to any anger at our brother that might crop up, right? That will separate you out. So the extent we have to go for this change and this shift in consciousness, this change in behavior, this change in principle. The principle isn't like, well, if it's not against the law, I can do it. The principle is to shift to a internally driven sense of right. And I want to do the right thing because that's the right thing to do, not I'm going to follow the law because I don't want to get in trouble, right? We talked about that a little bit in the last episode, but this isn't just about the action, stopping the action. It's about stopping the emotions that would cause the action. It's about changing the thinking that causes us to have the emotion to have the action, right? And then it's also to change the belief underlying eventually. You have to continue to do this progress and work. It's a backwards game, right? Because you got to stop the progress, see the emotion, stop the acting on the emotion, see the thinking, stop the thinking, change the belief. Right? Like, that's what doing the work's about. So, and he also didn't provide for an exception here. He's like, you can't hold on to the anger unless. He just says you can't hold on to the anger. Right? Even to be angry with your brother is sufficient to keep you out of the kingdom of heaven. Okay. Apply that today. How many people are robbing themselves of the kingdom of heaven in today society? Even if you believe the kingdom of heaven is that inner peace and that inner serenity that you get on a day-by-day basis, and it's not necessarily an afterlife waiting for you, but just the kingdom of heaven is here and now within you. You're robbing yourself of that peace by holding on to this anger and this bitterness within you. People don't realize that They're just handing this away. I do it sometimes too. But in today's day and age, this is so prevalent. People are just like, I hope you get what you deserve, right? Or people celebrating the death of individuals. It's a little scary out there. Regardless of how much you disagree with people, to celebrate with malice and hatred the death of another human being is harming yourself. It's disconnecting you from God, right? So Fox goes into how this growth has evolved and the picture we have to live by today, really. And he talks a little bit about how the first step was appropriate, right? We need the guideposts of the rules, right? We need to know what we can do and what we can't do, right? So it was just a point of evolution. If we had been given these the spiritual guidance in the beginning, no one would have been able to even comprehend what we're talking about, right? Because we were just so selfish and so self-centered, we couldn't even get a handle on it. So when he brought Jesus coming at this point, he says, is to usher in the new stage, right? Because there's more work to do. There's more than just these things, but the growth is given at the appropriate time. So, which was an interesting point. I thought I enjoyed contemplating that. So, and now he goes into why this is important to not hold on to this anger. It is simply not possible to get any experience of God worth talking about or to exercise very much spiritual power in the way of healing unless and until you have gotten rid of resentment and condemnation concerning your fellow man. Sorry, I can't read my writing all the time. Your brother man, excuse me. Brother man. So this is, you're robbing yourself of your ability to have any type of spiritual power or influence by holding on to this resentment and this condemnation and this bitterness within you. And he's talking, Fox is talking about how this separates us. It's not even close. When you hold this within you, you become disconnected from the God of your understanding. And this is, I just want to remind everybody too, this is written obviously from a Christian perspective, from Christian literature. But I do think the principles we're talking about here apply universally to that spiritual growth, whatever your spiritual foundation is that you're practicing, right? If you believe in source, energy, universe, if you believe in any type of other deity, right? These are core tenets to nurturing your soul and your spirit, to growing in a direction that would help you become more established and to become more connected to that power, whatever it is for you. But having any anger, any resentment will block you off from that connection, from that power greater than yourself, from that God of your understanding, right? If you have that within you, you have no true connection. In 12-step recovery, that's why the fourth step resentment inventory is so important, and the fear and the sex inventory as well, because it shows us how we use people, how we all of the ways that we get in the way of actually having this connection with God, and it put all these boulders that separate us from Him. And when we can actually go through that and move that out of the way, and we can get connected to what would be called the light of the Spirit, there's a whole different realization and different understanding, right? Suddenly we're not just living for ourselves. We're able to be connected to this God of our understanding and then put ourselves in service to it, which is the purpose that we're here for, really, at the end of the day. So when we're just wrapped up in this resentment and this condemnation and this anger and being judgmental, it's just feeds our selfishness and our self-centeredness, right? We become spiritually self-righteous again. We become personally slighted, and we become angered with righteous or self-righteous anger, which we're being told here is never appropriate, right? We're never supposed to do that. We're never supposed to actually have that perspective towards our fellow man, which is a refreshing take, which is a refreshing statement to actually hold on to. And then he says you can make no real spiritual progress or spiritual help when you're holding on to these things. Like, you're robbing yourself to be able to be of benefit and to be of use to anybody else in your life because you want to hold on to this. And that's so selfish. I know when I do it, that's what happens. All I do is I think about me and why I'm right and they're wrong and how horrible it is, right? When I get this anger, it's only me thinking about me. And when I'm doing that, I'm not helping anybody. I'm not of service to anybody. I am doing nothing for anybody. So it's a dangerous place to be. So he goes on to say, it may boldly be said that in prayer, the more love, the more power. And this is why people of developed spiritual perception take such pains to keep themselves free from thoughts of criticism and condemnation. And they know that they can have either their demonstration or their indignation, but they cannot have both. So they do not waste time trying to. You have a choice. You can hold on to this indignation, the resentment, the condemnation. You can hold on to that, or you can hold on to your spiritual development, or you can hold on to this growth, this peace, this tranquility that you've had the opportunity to participate in, that you've had the opportunity to actually receive. But you can only have one. You're choosing every single moment of every single day. You're choosing which one you actually bring into your life and which one do you hold on to in your life. And when you realize that the choice is in your hands, you're responsible, right? And that quote, I'm really happy he said it. Anger is not loving. It's just not, right? And the true power is in love. The true power of the God of your understanding, the true power of that the Christian religion is talking about is through love. Anger is a physical is a emotion that gives us physical maybe strength in a moment, power in a moment, like we feel justified, we feel strong, we feel like in control when we're angry, we feel a sense of power. That's why people get addicted to it. People get addicted to anger for that reason. But it's only ever temporary. It's ever fleeting. It's ultimately destructive. And if we hold on to that, we're actually letting go of something so much more powerful than we could ever have imagined. This strength that there is and the power that there is in love is incredible. And we rob ourselves of it because it's new, it's different. It doesn't make us always feel how we want to feel. So we try to have our own solutions. That's the story of alcoholism and drug addiction. At least that was mine. So, but what you realize is when you start walking this path, right? Because he said earlier that this is the beginning of your search for God. That when you start walking this path and you start getting these experiences of love and peace and serenity and tranquility in your life, you realize like you'd much rather have that than the anger. So you start pursuing it. And as you develop spiritually, like you make an intentional effort to work through any anger that comes up. And this isn't to say that you won't ever get angry again. He says even the spiritual people developed spiritual perception take such constant pains to keep themselves free from thoughts of criticism and condemnation, right? So it has to be an intentional practice to let it go, because it will crop up again, and you have to address it if it does. Like, there's a lot of stuff that we still have associations with, that we still have to work through. It's not a exact perfect science or execution for any human being, but it's the constant work we put in to actually stay on the right side of this stuff, on the healthy side, on the loving side, instead of that selfish and angry and resentful side. So remember, you can have peace, serenity, you can have anger and resentment. It's your choice. You can't have both, one or the other. And one you will grow with, one you will be destroyed by. It's just how it goes. Indignation, resentment, the desire to punish. This is a great list. So this is a list of all the stuff that us human beings love to hold on to. Indignation, resentment, the desire to punish other people or to see them punished, the desire to get even, the feeling of it serves him right. All these things form quite an impenetrable barrier to spiritual power or progress. All of that stuff. We like to see, any of these things will block us off from the sunlight of the Spirit, the peace, the serenity, the connection with this higher power, this God of our understanding, right? The invitation of the Holy Spirit into our souls and our lives, whatever it might be, right? Any of these, the indignation, resentment, the desire to punish other people, to see them punished, the desire to get even, the feeling that serves them right? This is all selfishness and self-centeredness. So even the karma will get them in the end. That's still a negative criticism. That's still being judge, jury, and executioner for these people. We can't put ourselves above one another. We just can't. We can't put ourselves in a position where we are wishing ill on somebody else. That is completely selfish. That is completely self-centered and not loving in any way, right? The karma belief, like wishing the karma to come to somebody, that's pretty negative and unhealthy. I didn't really think that. I took it. I would remember it to make myself feel better. Like, hey, they're going to get theirs, right? Like I feel better, right? Because in the future, I know it's going to come around to them. That's really not a good way to think. That's still being resentful. It's just making myself feel better because, hey, I'm not going to be the person that takes it out on them, but I know someone will, so I feel better that they're going to get their just rewards. That's not healthy either. That's not okay either. I might get some blowback on this, to be fair, but you should never have a hateful or condemning thought towards somebody just to make yourself feel okay. It's never a good idea. Right? This is so relevant for today. This is such a huge problem because it just is people thrive on this righteous indignation, this condemnation, this belittlement, this thinking less than our fellow man, like thinking less than the person next to you. And it's just so crippling. It's so crippling to the human spirit and to a place of love and charity and kindness and forgiveness. Like this is to wish someone ill or to celebrate someone's pain and suffering is so selfish, so self-centered, so angry and vindictive. So keep this in mind when you're thinking about what's going on today. Keep this in mind as you're going throughout the world and seeing what's being said and what you're putting into it. People want to practice these spiritual principles, but they hold this in their heart. And Fox talks about this. This is the altar portion where he talks about sacrificing this and that. These verses are talking about, and then Fox gives this understanding interpretation. He talks about this custom that it is we're supposed to come and give sacrifice, right? It's an illustration to say that we should not connect with God when we hold this anger and hatred, right? When we have a problem with our fellow man, right? We're actually having this practice with God in vain. What we need to actually do is address the anger. We need to address the condemnation, the resentment. We need to go make right and make peace with our brother, then come to God and have in the restored, seamless garment of our spiritual integrity. I loved that line. That was absolutely beautiful, right? Because there's a problem there. If you holding this, right, you're not truly practicing what the God of your understanding would have you practice. There's no way you are. And then to come and to sacrifice on this altar, to bring your prayers, to bring your concerns to God, right? You've already blocked off because you're not in love. You're not actually in a place to receive this. And that's scary to some people. It was scary to me to realize this too. But the reality of it is, as he said earlier, prayers will have little effect. Go make right. Go practice. Go work through this. Do the right things. Hold the right beliefs. Let this anger go and then come back and connect. Because everything else is just done in vain. Find the forgiveness needed or whatever spiritual principle you need to actually work through that and to get right and make this amends to your fellow man. And then come back to be of service to the God of your understanding. To come back to connect. And then this next part's actually kind of, it's very interesting. Fox goes in to talk about 3 circumstances in the verses, right? Like talked about angry, in danger of judgment, Raka, in danger of counsel, and say thou fool will be in danger of hellfire. That part of the verses, right? And what he's talking about is the progression, right? He's talking about these 3 circumstances we would find ourselves in, and they're actually a progression, right? When you're angry, it starts with anger, and it develops into this resentment and disdain. So when you get this emotion of anger, like you have to be aware of it, and because it's the beginning of something, which is very important to recognize, because the anger develops into hostility. Right? Because if you get angry, suddenly you're thinking about you're thinking about you taking it personally, you're making assumptions, you're thinking about why it was not right that this happened, right? You're making it all about you, or at least that's what I would do. I make it all about me when I'm angry, and that's a very dangerous place for me to be. I get this rage, I can get this hostility towards another human being built up beside me, and then the final part, the thou fool, right, is seeing others as less than. And we can never do that. We can never do that. So it goes from anger to hostility to seeing other people less than. And then actually the next part after that is violence. When one group of people thinks they're above another group of people, suddenly there's violence. Because they don't see them as equals. They don't see them as worthy of dignity and respect. They don't see them as loving children of God, parts of this universe just like them, right? It is a very dangerous place to be when you are condemning your fellow man, when you have such deep resentment, you don't care if they live or die, right? So it starts with anger, goes to hostility, and you see then it turns into seeing others as less than you. So you're setting up an environment where suddenly it's like, well, because of this, and this, I think I'm better than this person. They're lower than you. And this is very, very dangerous. And this actually brings us to a point where I wanted to just point this out. So I'm going to read a quote, and then I'll tell you why it's important. He says, to call a man a fool in this sense means that we consider that no good is to be expected from him, which is to deny the indwelling Christ in him. And to do this is to bring very serious consequences upon ourselves. Now, that quote that I just read came out of this book, right? Came out of this version, an original copy, really. In the audiobook I have of this, in this copy I have of this, in all versions, newer versions, the part which says, which is to deny the indwelling Christ in him, has been removed. Now, I have all these copies of this book back here. They all have it in it. So the original printing has, which is to deny the indwelling Christ in him. What he's saying with this line is this little flame of God, right? Because in the Christian practice, everybody was made in the image of God. Every human being was made in the image of God. So there's this essence of God in every human being. So when you are saying thou fool and you are discrediting and you have resentment and condemnation towards another human being, you are actually placing yourself higher than God, right? You are putting yourself in a position to be condemning of God's creation, which you have no right to do. So to actually let your anger and resentment progress to this point and to say, I condemn you, you child of God, is not your place. It is not healthy, and it is placing you in a very, very dangerous position. Now, I wanted to bring up this version problem because I think that's a very important premise of the entire Christian faith, is to remember, like, when all are children of God, that all are made in his image, right? So to leave this out is a critical piece of why the condemnation is so terrible. It's removing this value from them, because every human being has this value. And to remove this portion of what Fox stated there is it weakens the message that he was sending. It weakens the reality of what's going on, because I do believe that no man is better than another. Every man is worthy of dignity and respect, regardless of what you've gone through, what you've done, the actions you've taken. People will get the consequences as per the laws that they may or may not have broken, depending on what's going on and what the circumstances is. But I do believe every human being has worth and value. And to take that out of it is really a little scary to me. I would like to know why. Who made that decision to take that out? But so just to read the quote again, because it is such a powerful thing to remember, is to call a man a fool in this sense means that we consider that no good is to be expected from him, which is to deny the indwelling Christ in him. And to do this is to bring very serious consequences to ourselves. When we have that condemnation, we are putting ourselves in a very unhealthy, painful place. And then besides that, it's just not right to do. It is not our place to be condemning, to take away someone's dignity. So just wanted to point that out. That's why I always encourage, if you can, find an old copy, because there's things in here that haven't been translated over the years, right? This book's 92 years old. So, well, the original printing is 92. This one's 88 years old, I guess. But there's just so much with it. All right. It's very sad it's left out. But I'm glad I caught it, to be honest with you. So, the last quote I wanted to have was, what Jesus said, of course, was that whoever is angry with his brother under any circumstances is in danger, right? Anger is not an emotion we can continue to entertain or we can continue to hold on to. And but he brought this up because, talk about versioning difference. He says in the King James Version of the Sermon on the Mount, it states, anybody who is angry at his brother, that whosoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. And Emmet Fox is saying there's no, he was just pointing out that it's not needed to say without a cause, because everybody that's angry has a cause. There's a reason that they're angry, right? So to have that stated is not needed, and then in the revised edition that was taken out. So and he was just re-emphasizing the fact that anybody that holds anger in their heart is in danger. If you're angry at your fellow man for any reason and you're holding on to it, and because it does just prop up, at least maybe I'm wrong in saying that, right? Maybe you're just supposed to only maintain and get to a place of just pure peace and tranquility all the time and never be bothered if that's possible. I'd like to believe it is. I'm not there yet, but I do my best. But if I were to hold on to that anger and resentment, I'd be in a really bad place. And I know that from experience. So, but that brings us to the end of the chapter, or to this section anyway. We're going to have about 2 more sections in this chapter, and then we're moving on to the next thing. But I love this chapter in Emmet Fox's Sermon on the Mount. I hope you all do too. So I'll be looking forward to bringing it to you, the next part to you next week. So let me know what you think. I hope you enjoyed it. So until next time, thanks.